3,000 years ago, Greece was ruled by kings of unimaginable wealth and power. From their hilltop palaces, they reigned over a world of warriors clad in bronze, of merchants who sailed the wine-dark seas, and of poets who sang of gods and heroes. These were the Mycenaeans, the lords of the Aegean, whose tales lived on in the epics of Troy, of Agamemnon, and of Achilles. Their courts glittered with treasures of gold, their scribes kept records in the world's first written Greek, and their armies carried spears and shields that struck fear across the Mediterranean. The Mycenaean zenith, a world of palaces and clay. The Mycenaeans were the first advanced civilization on mainland Greece. Rising around 1600 BCE, they ruled from massive stone citadels, fortresses perched high on the hills, overlooking the lands they controlled like silent guardians of power. To understand the fall, we must first appreciate the height from which they fell. By the 14th and 13th centuries BC, the Mycenaean civilization was at its peak. They were not a unified nation like Egypt, but a collection of powerful, rival kingdoms, each ruled from a heavily fortified palace center. Think of places like Mycenae, the proverbial gold-rich city, or Pylos on the southwest coast, a sprawling administrative hub. Tiryns, with its unbelievable gravity-defying walls. These palaces were the beating hearts of the economy, religion, and power. Thanks to the decipherment of their script, Linear B, we can peer into the workings of these palaces. These clay tablets, never intended for permanence, they were temporary accounting records that were accidentally baked hard in the fires that destroyed the palaces, reveal a society of breathtaking bureaucracy. The palace was everything. It controlled the production of olive oil, perfumes, and textiles. It allocated bronze to smiths for making weapons and tools. The Mycenaeans were master traders and seafarers. Their pottery has been found from Sicily to the Levant. They traded with the mighty Hittite Empire in Anatolia and the fabulously wealthy pharaohs of Egypt. They were also, undoubtedly, warriors. Their fortifications are a testament to a world that knew conflict. The Homeric epics, written centuries later, preserve a garbled memory of this warrior elite culture, a world of chariots, boars, tusk helmets, and individual heroism. But this complex, palace-based system had critical weaknesses. Around 1200 BC, several wrenches were about to be thrown into its gears, all at once. The storm breaks, a cascade of collapse, circa 1200 to 1100 BC. The end did not come overnight, but it came with shocking speed. Within a generation or two, the entire edifice came crashing down. Archaeology shows a clear pattern. Around 1200 BC, a wave of destruction swept across the Aegean world. Palace after palace was violently destroyed and abandoned. The evidence is etched into the very stones. At Mycenae, parts of the citadel show signs of massive fire. At Pylos, the Linear B tablets themselves were caught in the inferno, preserving the final, mundane records of a kingdom on the brink. At Tiryns, the lower town was destroyed, but the citadel held on, barely. The same story plays out at Thebes, Gla, and others. So, what caused this wave of destruction? For a long time, the answer seemed simple. The Dorians. The ancient Greek historian Thucydides, writing over 700 years later, spoke of a great movement of peoples, with the Dorian Greeks invading from the north and sweeping down, displacing the Mycenaean Greeks. It's a clean, simple narrative of invasion and conquest. But the truth is far more complex and far more interesting. Modern archaeology suggests there was no single, sudden invasion. Instead, the Mycenaean world was brought down by an interconnected web of crises. First, there were environmental factors. Tree ring data and climate models now suggest that the eastern Mediterranean experienced a period of severe and prolonged drought around this time. For a society heavily dependent on agriculture, drought was a catastrophe. Failed harvests meant famine, a population under stress, and a king unable to feed his people or his soldiers. Second, there was internal strife. As resources dwindled, competition between those rival Mycenaean kingdoms would have intensified. The Linear B tablets from Pylos show a state of high alert, with watchers posted along the coast. They were preparing for an attack from the sea. This leads to the third factor. Third, the threat from the Sea Peoples. This mysterious confederation of raiders appears in the records of the Hittites and Egyptians. The pharaoh Rameses III left inscriptions describing how no land could stand before their arms, and how they laid waste to great kingdoms. While their exact origins are debated, they were likely a mixture of displaced people from across the Mediterranean, perhaps including some Mycenaeans themselves, turned to piracy and migration as their own homelands collapsed. They disrupted the vital sea lanes that were the lifeline of the Mycenaean economy. The darkness descends. Life in the Dark Age, circa 1100 to 800 BC. With the palaces gone, the darkness truly descended. The period from 1100 to 800 BC is the true Dark Age of Greece. The first and most telling change: writing disappeared. Linear B was entirely forgotten. For the first time in centuries, and for the next 400 years, not a single person in mainland Greece could read or write. Knowledge could no longer be stored on clay or papyrus. It lived only in memory and in the spoken word. Archaeological surveys show that the number of settlements in Greece fell by as much as 90%. The remaining population clustered in small, isolated, and often defensible villages. People abandoned entire regions. Material culture became incredibly poor. The exquisite craftsmanship of the Mycenaeans vanished. Gone were the frescoes, the inlaid daggers, the intricate jewelry. Pottery, once beautifully decorated, became simple and crude. But then, something remarkable happened. Around 1050 BC, a new style emerged: proto-geometric pottery. This was characterized by simple, precise lines and circles, drawn with a compass. Greece became a backwater. The once busy sea lanes were empty of Mycenaean ships. Within a few generations, the people living in the shadow of the colossal walls of Mycenae or Tiryns had no idea who had built them. The long twilight, seeds of a new world. But the Dark Age was not a static period of misery. It was a long, slow transformation. One of the most significant developments was the migration east. As life became difficult on the mainland, groups of Greeks began to sail across the Aegean and settle on the western coast of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. These settlements, which would become great cities like Miletus and Ephesus, were a crucible for new ideas. Another crucial change was the adoption of iron. The collapse of international trade had cut off the supply of tin, making bronze impossible to produce on a large scale. Out of necessity, people turned to ironworking. And then, there was the power of the spoken word. In a world without writing, memory and storytelling became the most vital arts. This was the age of the bard, the Aioidos, who would sing epic tales of a heroic past. These stories, passed down and embellished over generations, were the raw material from which Homer, centuries later, would compose the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Dark Age, in a cruel twist of fate, had burned away the old, hierarchical order, clearing the ground for something entirely new to grow. The dawn of light, the archaic Renaissance. Around 800 BC, the darkness finally begins to lift. The signs of rebirth are everywhere. Pottery evolves again, from the proto-geometric to the full geometric style. This pottery is covered in dense, intricate patterns of meanders, zigzags, and later, even human and animal figures depicting funerary scenes and myths. Then, a development of world historic importance occurs: the adoption of the alphabet. The Greeks, coming into contact with Phoenician traders, borrowed their alphabetic system of writing. But they made a crucial innovation. They used some of the signs to represent vowels for the first time. Population began to recover dramatically, leading to a new wave of colonization, much more organized than the Dark Age migrations. And finally, the poleis emerged as the dominant political form. The first temples, built of stone, began to appear, serving as a focal point for community identity that was separate from a king's palace. The world that was emerging in the 8th century BC was recognizably the world of ancient Greece, the world of city-states, hoplite warfare, Olympic games, and philosophy. It was a world utterly different from the centralized, monarchical world of the Mycenaeans. So, what are we to make of the fall of the Mycenaeans and the long Dark Age that followed? It is a story of fragility. The Mycenaean civilization, for all its glory, was built on a brittle foundation. The people of Greece did not vanish. In the silence and the simplicity of the Dark Age, they slowly, unconsciously, laid the groundwork for a new and even more remarkable civilization.